וגם דבר שמעורר לא מעט תרעומת.
Okay, let's start. Thank you, Rosie, for joining. G'dvach Yehuda, G'dvach Menachem Mendel, G'dvach Beryl, G'dvach everyone who's joining tonight. Menachem Mendel, you got the everything's okay?
Yes, everything's live.
It's on it spotlighted?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to share with you tonight an amazing story. Actually, two stories. I only think of two right now. As I continue, maybe I'll think of another one. Last week was I actually wasn't planning to share that third story, but I want to share with you tonight an incredible story about the Alter Rebbe and the Mitteler Rebbe. This past Thursday was the anniversary of the liberation of the Mitteler Rebbe, and this coming Shabbos, next Shabbos, is the Geula, is the anniversary of the liberation of the Alter Rebbe. And there are many, many stories about the Alter Rebbe and the Mitteler Rebbe. But this story I'm going to share with you tonight, even though it's one of the more fascinating stories, really a fascinating story, but it's for some reason it's not as known, not as famous as other stories of the Alter Rebbe and Mitteler Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe would often tell the Mitteler Rebbe, say bracha, Rosie. Say bracha. The Alter Rebbe would often tell the Mitteler Rebbe teachings of chassidus in order to give the Mitteler Rebbe energy, give him strength. He didn't have a strong composition, and the Alter Rebbe would by telling him teachings of chassidus that actually gave him health. This was also true later on in his life as well. During the time of his illness, the doctor said that he needs to share chassidus with his students, with his chassidim, in order for him to help his health. His successor, the Tzemach Tzedek, said about the Mitteler Rebbe that if you would prick his finger, blood wouldn't come out of his finger, chassidus would come out. So, as a child, the Alter Rebbe would tell him teachings of chassidus, and that would literally help his health. So, one day the Mitteler Rebbe came to his father, and he was full of fear, he was trembling, and he started to cry. He said he was crying because he had a strange dream. In his dream, he told this to his father, he saw a very wide river. The water was very clear. The water was very nice. It was flowing strongly. It was a flowing river, but it didn't have any waves. The river spread to and caused various tributaries come off the river, and the water, though, didn't change by going to various tributaries. It stayed always in all different tributaries with very slow water. Wasn't very fast, but without waves. While the Mitteler Rebbe says, while I'm watching this, I see two people approach the river. One of these two people is taller than the other, and they're both wearing long clothing. The taller man had a 1 foot that was thicker than the other foot, and at a distance I saw other people's, but the people which were at a farther distance, I couldn't see their faces. And these two people standing by the river were approached by who, Rosie? She knows. Who came over to them? The Alter Rebbe came over to them, right, Rose? Okay. There was a board on the river. And in the Mitteler Rebbe's dream, he sees the taller man being told by the shorter man to walk on the board. He walks on the board. He's walking on the board. The water starts to rise, and the clothing of the taller man started to get wet. And then the water receded, the board went up, and the water goes up with the board, and the board went down, and went back and forth, and he was getting wet, and the board is going down, and then finally the shorter man tells the taller man to go down, and he goes down. The Levi, we can hear you. Chani, I don't know if you wanted them to hear you. They can hear you. Okay, so the two people who were standing at a distance from the river, when there were two people that were at a distance from the river that approached and left again, back and forth, and their faces weren't as clear. Afterwards, you couldn't see their faces at all. Then the Alter Rebbe and these two men walked together, all holding each other, hugging each other, so to speak. They walked together. The shorter man was in the middle. The Mizitcha Magid, they gave a sneak preview of the interpretation of the dream. The taller man walked on the left, and the Alter Rebbe walked on the right. After they're walking for some time, they approach another river. This river was already a more stormy kind of river, had different kinds of colors of water, and it was like an ocean full of waves. When they get to this river, the shorter man tells the taller man, pointing to the Alter Rebbe, that he should go on the board. So the Alter Rebbe goes on the board, and he walks all the way to the edge of the board. And he wanted to continue walking. He wanted to move the board so he can go further, but the shorter man told him he can come back. And then he said, with the power of these waves, you're able to go in waves of fire as well. That was the dream of the Mitteler Rebbe. And I just want to mention one more point in the dream, that the waves at one point had such force that they weren't just contained in the river, but they went over to the river bank and they went into a field. But as soon as they got in the field, the water disappeared, but fruit started to grow. That was the dream of the Mitteler Rebbe, and that he woke up and he asked the Alter Rebbe what this means. So usually the Mitteler Rebbe's prayers were full of joy. He used to pray quietly, but this day the Alter Rebbe said to him he should come back to the Alter Rebbe after he finishes praying. And then when he went to pray, he was very emotional and he was crying and came back after davening to hear from the Alter Rebbe the meaning of his dream. He comes back to the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe tells him, the shorter man was Baal Shem Tov, and the taller man was, remember? She knows, which is just the Mizitcha Magid. And the reason why one foot was thicker than the other foot was because he suffered from pain in his feet. The Baal Shem Tov asked the Magid, the shorter man asked the taller man to walk on the board to hint to him that with the teachings of his students, you're able to litzlo. That's the word that the Frierdiker Rebbe said when he shared the story. What does the word litzlo mean? So one of the people who was listening to the story asked the previous Rebbe, what does that word mean? Does it mean, like we say in our daily prayers, it says that the Egyptians sunk in the water like lead. So was the Baal Shem Tov telling the Magid that with the water of the students, you're able to go in the water and sink in the water, whatever that means. So the previous Rebbe didn't really answer. The previous Rebbe said, and I quote, the Frierdiker Rebbe said, I'm paraphrasing from the Hebrew, the word salol has many explanations. Those who are interested to know the meaning should look in the books of grammar, but I must say the story the way I heard it, and that's the language I heard it. And don't ask me explanations about this right now. That's the previous Rebbe said. We are all chassidim. We have to hear the meaning we have to know the meaning of the words, and we have to feel them. That's the way the previous Rebbe said the story. The Baal Shem Tov wanted to tell the Magid they were able to go in the waters with slow, whatever that means. The second river is the river of, you know, Rosie? The river of the tears of Bali Teshuvah. When the Alter Rebbe visited Mizrich, the Mizitcha Magid telling us the Mitteler Rebbe, when I came to Mizrich, 25 years before, the Maggid shared a parable about the difference between tzaddikim and Baalei Teshuvah. And he gave him a parable about two princes. And I don't know what the parable is. It's printed. I could look it up, but I don't know right now what the parable is. And somehow that parable, the Alter Rebbe said, became engraved in me about how there's tzaddikim and there's Baalei Teshuvah. That Hashem has two kinds of children. And that parable gave me that sense, that feeling in me, engraved in me, the feeling that I have to bring every Jew closer to Hashem. And for 5 years after I heard this teaching, I would travel from place to place. Sometimes I would travel in a hidden way that people didn't know where I was. Sometimes I traveled in a way that people didn't know who I was, in order to inspire other people, inspire other youth. That's what the Alter Rebbe responded. The Mitteler Rebbe shared the story with the Tzemach Tzedek. And he told the Tzemach Tzedek that the first thing my father did, his first efforts in Yiddishkeit was to inspire others, to make Baalei Teshuvah, to inspire people to do Teshuvah. And after he was crowned as a Rebbe, he continued this, to inspire others. That was his main effort. In fact, the Rebbe, it's shared in another talk, I think of the previous Rebbe, that the Alter wanted to call the Chassidim the Baalei Teshuvah. That was his goal in making Chassidim, was that they should be Baalei Teshuvah. The only reason he didn't call them Baalei Teshuvah is because of, if you will, PR reasons. Because Baalei Teshuvah sounds like they in that time, Baal Teshuvah meant someone who made terrible mistakes. That's what Baal Teshuvah meant in that time. So he didn't want people to get the wrong idea. But the idea of Teshuvah, according to chassidus, means that you learn with inspiration, you pray with inspiration, you want to cleave to Hashem, not just learn and daven, but you have a feeling of Teshuvah, of wanting to bond with Hashem, and you're learning and daven. So the Mitteler Rebbe said that's what my father was about. He was about inspiring people to do Teshuvah. And do you know how he made people do Teshuvah? Said the Mitteler Rebbe. Someone who saw my father once, that's what Mitteler Rebbe said, someone who saw my father once could not go to sleep at night without waking up the next day completely different. Just seeing the Alter Rebbe one time, that would make a person wake up the next day differently. Then the Mitteler Rebbe told the Tzemach Tzedek, this power of the Alter Rebbe, he gave to who he gave it to. That's the words he said. He gave this power to who he gave it to. So David Isser is wondering, who did he give it to? So the Tzemach Tzedek repeated the story to the Rebbe Marash. And when he said to the Rebbe Marash the conclusion of the story that the power was given to the one who was given it to, he said, this power contains within it the sincere sacrifice of Chassidim, and it comes as an inheritance. When the Rebbe Marash shared the story to the Rebbe Rashab, he said, this sincere sacrifice exists even, listen to this, even by those who are born Chassidim. Even someone who was born a Chassid has the power to revive the dead. That's what he said. Even someone who's born a Chassid can revive the dead. When the Rebbe Rashab repeated the story to the previous Rebbe and he shared the part about even someone who's born a Chassid, he said, what you're born with doesn't require any effort. That's something, but when you work for something, there is something you can't imagine what kind of energy, where you can reach when you make an effort. But even someone who was born a Chassid can also revive the dead. Another occasion, the Rebbe once commented, not about the story, but in general, the Gemara says in Gemara that anyone who's mentioned the Gemara, anyone mentioned the entire Talmud, the smallest student, the smallest teacher mentioned in the Talmud was able to revive the dead. So in a similar way, the Rebbe said that every one of us has the ability to spiritually revive the dead, and someone who is, so to speak, spiritually in a state of death, shalom, you don't look at them in the way they look on the outside, but realize that there's something in there and you're able to revive them. Then the previous Rebbe added another point. It's interesting how each Rebbe added another point to the story. The previous Rebbe added the following point. He said, when you put on tefillin, your head is healthy, and your heart is healthy, and all your limbs of your body are healthy. If God forbid you don't put on tefillin, the head gets sick, and the hand gets sick, and all the limbs of the body get sick until a person completely, shalom, becomes the opposite of life. That's the words of the previous Rebbe sharing the story. Says these are the words of our teacher, but we, the students, have to learn from every word, understand the inner feeling, understand the meaning of these words with the inner feeling. In other words, it's not enough just to hear the story that I'm sharing with you now, but there's something here in these words that we're meant to dive into and feel. And then the previous Rebbe goes on to explain the difference between a chassid who was born a chassid who became a chassid. And he says that there's a certain value that you get just by being part of a family of chassidim. Interesting thing he mentions is that there used to be a custom that chassidim wouldn't want to share the merit of traveling to see their Rebbe with a horse and wagon. Since they didn't want to share the mitzvah, they would travel on foot for thousands of miles to see their Rebbe. So the previous Rebbe says that someone who comes from a family whose grandfather and great-grandfather traveled on foot to see his Rebbe, so in his veins, he has something there, despite the way he may look. But that's just someone who was born a chassid. But the main emphasis is that even someone who's born a chassid could have the ability to revive the dead. But how much more so someone who wasn't born a chassid, someone who by his own effort made a connection, certainly has this power. The second story I want to share with you on the same theme is about a man named Rabbi Mendel Wieder. I don't know the origin of the story. I tried to find the origin of the story. I found 10 different places on the internet where the same story is said, but I don't know the original origin of the story. But the truth is that it doesn't really matter where the story comes from because it's the story of each of us. Mendel Wieder, there was a Romanian family, and I know that I did find in Romania, there's a Wieder family there, and there was a Rav, a rabbi in a city in Romania, I don't remember the name, and when the rabbi passed away, his 17-year-old son was expecting to be asked to be the successor of his father. Apparently, he didn't muster he didn't come up to be chosen, and he was very deeply insulted. So insulted that he moved far away, and he became Geschmatzig. He converted to Christianity, and he ended up becoming a cardinal in Hungary. And when World War II began, he was so anti-Semitic, and he was so vocal about it. The newspapers writing articles about Jews that the Nazis didn't feel a need to kill him. They felt, he's not really a Jew anymore. Even the Nazis felt that way. And which was really an unusual thing. The Nazis killed everybody. There was such a thing that didn't have exceptions, but they made an exception for him. One day, the Skolany Rebbe, after the war, his home was open for all Holocaust survivors. He took care of a lot of people after the war. He's a great tzaddik. So someone comes to his door, and he can't even speak. He's so emotional. What's going on? What's your name? My name is Mendel. And finally he says, my name is Mendel Wieder. And Skolany Rebbe speaks to his soul. And the guy was a torn person. And he was able to wake him up and to bring him back to Hashem and to his people. But one day the Skolany Rebbe asks him a question. He said, why is it that even when you convert to Christianity, you still kept the name Mendel Wieder? Mendel Wieder, the cardinal. You know, it reminds me of the famous joke about this guy who converts to Christianity, and he gives his first sermon, and he asks his colleagues, how was my sermon? You say it was great, but next time, don't begin your sermon at my dear fellow Goyim. You know, so Mendel Wieder, why would you use the name Mendel Wieder if you want to become a cardinal? So you said that the word Wieder means to come back. And even while he was experiencing all this hatred and anti-Semitism to his own people, he always felt this hatred because he identified so strongly with the Jewish people, with Torah, and even while In other words, he had such a love for Torah. He wanted to succeed his father. And when he wasn't able to succeed his father, that's what caused this confused feeling of love coming out as hatred. It was a disappointed love that made him feel such animosity to the Jewish people. He wanted to be part of them, and he didn't feel he was able to. And it's a similar thing that says about Timnah, that Timnah wanted to marry the Jewish people, and Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov didn't accept her, and that's why she left her will and testament to her son Amalek was attack them, destroy them, because she wanted to be part of them, and she wasn't accepted. In a similar way, this man Levi, he wanted to be close, and he wasn't accepted. And a similar thing parents have to realize about children, we have to realize about all our brothers and sisters, that sometimes a person may seem very anti-Semitic and self-hating Jew, etc. A child needs to receive love from a parent, and you grow up without that love. So what happens is the child is still waiting for that love. One last story. Rabbi Shabbat shared that someone in his community has a son who he sent him out of his house because he just wasn't obeying the rules of their home and they didn't want them at home. He comes to the house one day and his father accepts him in the house. And son stays at the house for a day or two. And one day he takes a $500 euro and he burns the $500 euro in front of his father. And his father calls Rabbi Savititsky. He said, "What should I do?" He said, "What did you do?" "What did I do? I kicked him out of my house. I slapped him twice in his face." And I said, "Well, you're out of your mind. Why are you doing this?" And Savititsky said he was testing you. He wants to see, do you really care about him? Are you going to accept him no matter what? So there are a lot of people that may act in a way of animosity to their own faith and etc., but it's not because they really hate it. It's the opposite. They really want a connection. They just confused because they feel they can't connect. And by giving them the okay, one last story, I'll let you guys go. There was a Rosh Yeshiva of Petach Tikva. His name was Rabbi Yaakov Naiman. Yaakov Naiman, he was very open about his love for students. And one day he gets a phone call on Saturday night that one of his students had gone to a movie theater. So he asked the student, "How do you go to the movie theater?" Which was considered, a major crime in this yeshiva, going to a movie theater. "How do you go to the movie theater?" He told me he went to the movie theater by a bus. "Oh, I'll take a taxi." Took a taxi. The taxi goes faster than a bus. And he arrives by the movie theater. And he sees his student walking out of the bus. He runs over to him. And the student is like, whoa, why are you here? What's going on? Do you watch movies too? Like, why are you here? So he tells him, "I know you went outside tonight and you're not wearing a coat, and I came to bring you a coat." So the boy's like, "You need a coat too?" No, I have a taxi waiting for me. Please take my coat." So the boy walks in the movie theater. The coat doesn't warm his body. The coat burns his body, burns all the negativity in the body. The movie doesn't hurt his soul. The movie warms up his soul. This experience really caused him to become a changed person, seeing that his teacher had expressed to him unconditional love. So that's what a lot of people in our lives are waiting for. And okay, one last story. This is a mamish last story. Rabbi Safran shared in our synagogue a few years ago, amazing story about someone who was a parent in Hillel, who came to him with the following problem. Her father couldn't get along with his grandchildren. And she didn't know what the problem was, but Zaidi just couldn't, the parent of his grandchildren just didn't get along, and she didn't know what to do. So her Safran said to the grandfather, "Tell me, when you go to your grandchildren's house, what do you do?" I asked my daughter says, "Hey, who wants to talk to Zaidi?" And they say nobody, no one answers. And so sometimes they say hello or they talk for a second and then is listen what you're going to do. Rabbi Safran says, next time you go to visit your grandchildren, you're going to take a coffee, you're going to sit down, you're not going to do anything. Just sit there. Don't do anything. Okay? So after a few months, he sees how things going. It's amazing. What was amazing? What changed? The fact that he wasn't there to test them, wasn't there to ask them, wasn't there to teach them. He was just there to be with them. Just being there to be with them caused in them this reciprocated a unconditional good feeling towards him. He's just there to be with him. Zaidi is here. That's it. So in a similar way with people in our lives, that especially those closest to us, they just need that unconditional, I'm here for you. And that gives them so much more than all the different words we could say and different things wise things that we know. Unconditional. And that's how we are able also to inspire others. Speaking of the Mitteler Rebbe famously created colonies to help Jews physically, not to help them spiritually, to help them spiritually. The Baal Shem Tov taught us that you help a Jew physically, help him spiritually is something else. If you also have to help him spiritually as well, great. But the first thing you do is you try to help a Jew physically, unconditional. And that's what I wanted to share tonight. And before we wish you all a good vach, I want to ask everyone to stay on a little bit. We're going to show you now the living Torah of the week. And it's a really incredible living Torah. We started right after Shabbos and Shul. It's one person who was never really attending the living Torah decided to stay this week. He said, I never cried so much. I don't remember crying so much. It's really, really powerful video. So please stick around. Nachmano, please show us the living Torah.
Are you off?
No.
Der Rebbe nicht mehr sehen, von nach hinten geht, gedreht zu hören, sagt Badaktere. Und danach seien die Dorten, hat gesagt, dass will recht von der Stadt in einer kleinen Städte, weiter von Wien. Und mit der Friere ist gegangen in einer Stadt, in einer Kleid. Und dort eingekauft Kleider, mit verschiedenen Tätigkeiten. Danach ist reingeflogen in der Kleinstädte, was gewähnt dort nach verworfen. Und dort ist reingegangen zu Ahui, wo es hat gelebt an Almone mit 2 Töchtern und hat bei sich gelassen die alle Kleider, was hat eingekauft, wie Geld, die Anore Mekalle soll können tragen in Hafen.
I was learning in the yeshiva, and my father passed away. I was 15 years old, and my mother had 2 jobs.
I was 4.5 years old. My father got killed in the pogrom in Hebron.
You don't have a father, you don't have a mother, you don't have an uncle. Garnish. So what did you have? A Rebbe. So anything, any problem, anything that bothered you, you went into the Rebbe.
I wasn't 770. I was a Talmud in Yeshiva. So the Rebbe told me to start looking for a shidduch. Rabbi Chadakov comes to me. He has a shidduch for me.
Das ist eine Mitzwe auf Ledere Deres. Das heißt, auf die Nisuin ist verbunden. Nicht nur ein Union aus Mann Harewe oder ein Union von dem dort, nur danach ist dort der Dere Shorim Levera von Bonim und Bnei Bonim. Eskim Batero bei Mitzwes, und Ledere Deres ist Allahas Kama ve Kama, als viele die Protim Shebaze, wie das Bahashgoche Protis.
Even by my dates, I walked into the Rebbe. Before the date, after the date, discuss with him what he spoke at the dates, how long was the dates, where did I go to the dates. This is the shaykhs the Rebbe had with the Boker.
They have nobody in the family here. Why did I come to United States? I came to the Rebbe, so I want the Rebbe should come to that Noim. The Rebbe takes a look. He said, Siddur Kedushin, he is accepting. One of the Noim is she should wear a sheitel.
Beschaß mir geht mir jasse sein a Bais Bezalel, was der Fund kommen da noch a Reis Deres, wie Deres, darf sich das ohne mit Ainen von es hier als Nefesh a Fila a Prat Kotten wie Jeser, und hat der Demo geht der Rebester hat Schlocha am Vierto Seis Beruchni ist, und hat das im Mamschech hat Tesfis Broche wat Schlocha eich in Gashmitz gepschute. Na, hatten wir nicht, was wir nicht.
Once the word Wochen, die Gehirn gelernt, zusammen. It was ein Topschien, Judalit. So hat schon geplatzt von allem. Der Rebbe, der Tag gave a Brochen, so hat sich ein Hochgelost, Chevre. Chassan got him a Jahr, Allah, Ropi.
Da sehen wir, was wir mit einem verstanden. Da haben wir nicht mit Passover sein gegonnen, so zu sagen, aber was heißt, mit einer großen Dinge, die sind über sehr Kassen. Das ist dann immer in einer Alter, was hat Kassen und was schon hinkriegen und die nicht verschämt werden. Halleluja.
Some sent for a lady.
I asked the Rebbe for a bracha. The Rebbe gave me a bracha. Then he asked me, when are you going to get married? When will the wedding take place? I said, well, there's Pesach soon. After Shavuos, from summer, after the summer, maybe in the summer. So the Rebbe said to me, as Wilkeit habe ich in mein Leben keinmal nicht gehört. Was soll der Chassenen nicht sein in other Rishon, oder in other Pesach, aber for Pesach. Ich habe mal ein bisschen Zeit zu nehmen, aber Geld. Der Rebbe said, wolltest du davon haben, kannst du leihen von den Americas, that the Rebbe would help me in that.
I did not have my parents, so my feeling were very, very low. The Rebbe told me if I should go to hanukkah and ask him for $500 and buy a diamond ring. And you'll be able to pay it out, you'll pay it out. He asked me if I have clothes to levushim for chasana, satuk, nizah. And before the chasana, the Rebbe again told me I should get to hanukkah another $500 to buy a shaitel for the color.
I went over to her, I told her, a shaitel? Oh no, no way. A shaitel is for old ladies. I'm not an old lady. She says that now, if it will be no shaitel, the Rebbe wants me Siddur Kedushin, I'll live over the Shidduch. She'll become like a little shmata, she said. I said, did I tell you what the Rebbe said that time? Avos Yisrael means a ben of Bais Yisrael, that you see that they need something to give it to them. I'm giving you, the parish should be a mensch, even if the Rebbe won't be Siddur Kedushin. She says, what? I'm buying a sheitel.
I walked into bed, he's a bit in Siddur Kedushin. Der Rebbe gesagt, ja, mit dat nein, nicht mehr wie 2 Bilder. Ja, gut. I hired right away a movie. When the Rebbe saw the light of the movie, he looked at me. Mit der Schmerz, er sagt, du hast mich rausgenockt. I have him on the movie, the Rebbe. And he gave us the mazel tov, a moiradik.
You cannot turn in Oisius. You cannot describe it in words. The Rebbe was really like a father to us. Gashmis was worrying about everything.
She says, you can't imagine how happy I was that time. Who did it? The Rebbe. Isn't this the biggest office is always possible?
I didn't have anybody. Everybody was killed by the Nazis. So what should you do? We went to the Rebbe. The Rebbe never closed the door on us.
This production is made possible through the generosity of the members of the GEM Foundation.
Minag is am nemt on zwei Porlach, sei mit Sabachos und sei mit Sabakalo, noch do Erkle was mis noch mäßig base, aber al kol ponim al Shushvini, I das echt Sacher und echt nicht geben, was der Fall ist der Schäler, die Linie von Ishamubert. Was ist in der Ruf der Tal? Ist wie der Mond früher, als sie gewesen bei der Chassene von der Iden mit den Ebersten, wo das sagt, ich und Socho, Schchina, Schroje, Binea, a jeder Volk, was hat Chassene gedacht, Meshe wie Israel, it vergleicht man das gleich, a das ist a Mecho, Yitzilcho, Beganeden, Mikedem, der erste Chassene, danach, wie es gewesen beim Maten Hasinai, der Chassene Klolis von der Kodesh Baruch Hu, Knesset Israel mit ihm. Und wie sagt in Medisch, hat damals gewesen, beim Maten Tere gewesen zwei Schuschwine, nicht mehr. Meshe wie Jahre. Sagt auf der Ruf in Seher, als Meshe gewesen Schuschwine de Malko, und Arne gewesen Schuschwine de Matronisse von der Iden. Was Choscha viele Alpizer kommt sich ist, als darf sein zwei Mannswohl, I do an Arichus, in Drusche von dem alten Rebbe in Teiro Eir, in Tetzave, und in Hisopis, in der Hisopis, in der Bier Nesef, in der Hisopis zu Teiro Eir, und der Masbir dort, na was hat getan, Aaron, gewann Avidose, bei Leschas Hanelis, auf Meilis, Nimatole Meilo, Baalesches Hanelis und alle Shiva Knei Hamanere, aber das ist Kebel alle hin, die mir wohl bedrusche Baalescho, ihnen von Meshe gewinnt sicher, Teres Meshe Abdi, Schuschwine de Malke, Mamschich sein, mir bei Meile Lemate. Und die Teich das so, das in Mai in die Trude, bei Meshe und Mai die Nukwe von Maren. Aber das ist der Chibik von Sacher in die Kehle. Auf Obtaschen, dass sie einfach ist, und nicht schrecken sich, am Bus jenem Dafke, Masbre seine Nisses von Chassidus, der alte Rebbe hechet in der Weir dort, aber das Altan poschet bepastos in Teve Hoda. Aber was darf man Bichlal haben, Schuschwini bei Chassen? Und man sagt, dann darf man haben die Schuschwini, nicht das mehr nicht wie einmal, jedem Achassen, jedem Achuppe. Aber danach darf man sie nicht ankommen zu Schuschwini. Was Schuschwini, viele sagen, dem Chossen und vielen zusammen mit der Kalle zusammen mit den Chossen. Sagt der alte Rebbe, aber passt es in der Tat, als sie haben eine Busche, Eilahem Keach, Misadas See allein sollen sich miskade sein mit mehr Busche. Die Chance kommen zu gehen, eine gute Freund, wie der Mercedes bringt Europa, Freie David, der Freund von David, und teilt zu Europa in Targum, Schuschwine. A Schuschwine ist ein Sagini, und das ist einer gute Freund und jeder ein guter Freund. Ich darf mir haben, soll kommen zu gehen, ein guter Freund, und soll mechazig sein und geben Keach und nehmen unter der Hand und führen, was soll das sich misgaber al habusha, weil in Joni, was fühlt sich nicht bequem, und soll sein der Linie nach Hasene Kechol Hador. Was sich an Nord, bei der Kalle soll das sein verbunden mit der Isha, und bei der Chosen soll das sein verbunden mit der Ish, setzt man das echt bei Pashtus, aber wer kann mehr durchnehmen sein Gefühl? Von dem Chossen, ich beschaße sich von wegen jenem, was einmal gewähnt nach Chossen. Und durchgegangen dieselbe Union. Bei Schenken, als wird es hören, von der Mutter viele, ist das nicht dieselbe Sache, aber der Gefühl, von der Isha nicht dieselbe Gefühl und Busche, wie das ist bei dem Baal und bei dem Ich. Al Pizé darf noch oben der Bier, der zweite Minische Bese. A dieselbe Sache bei Quater und bei Quater. Der Linie von Miller ist, das ist ein Bris Elam, und Brise, Shelakotisch Borchu, wie Psar Chem von Ayin. Und der Linie von Bris Miller, was er hechet, als Scheiches Mirchedes zu Achassene. Und der Linie von Martin Taylor ist der Gewinn, als jenem Jedo le Mat und Tachtenim Jalu le Maila. Wo hoi le Bosse Rechot, wo das der Chugiton bei Martin Taylor, mit den Nesna. Aber das Schole Basei gewinn, bei Echot hoi Avrom, durch die Linie von Bris Miller, schon nicht mehr Leo Lezari Achro, ad Elom, und was hat Chugiton Bris Miller bei Avrom, was kiem Avrom, Kola Taylor Kula. Actually, nicht nur, und Turgiton darf in der Mitzvah von Mille, aber das soll mit Kasher sein, dem Psarchen, dem Gashmis-Hela, mit der Ruchnis von der Mitzvah. Aber noch wird die Gashmis Achefet shel Mitzvah, und das ist der Scheiches und der Kesher zwischen den beiden Unionen, wie gesagt in der Achreni, warum der Linie von Mille macht a Chassene, a Gashmis-Hela le Meile, und Ruchnis in Jerig Lamato, bis wann nicht, das wird ein Sache, a Chefet shel Gdusha, die Gdusha sa Mitzvah, mit der Gashmis hat vielen, oder Zemmer, hat vielen, oder der Zemmer hat Zitzes, wie Kajese Base, und der Fall Echet, wie dort gewinnt Schuschwini. Ist da Echet Schuschwini, und Echet mit dem Dirk, und mit dem Eifma soll sein, wie ich schon,
with materials from the Living Archive, established by the Rohr Family Foundation.